There's not a single best way. We're all just doing this the best that we can.
Yep.
Whether you're Rich Froning, you're Ben Gibbs, you're David McKenzie, whoever you are, you're going about this life the way that you see fit as the best way. Just because Rich Froning's made millions of dollars in CrossFit doesn't mean he had some set out, laid out plan and knew every single step before he got there. He just started working one day and didn't stop for 10 years. And that's how he ended up where he is. And that's the theme that we hear over and over is there's so many different paths, so many different ways to get to quote unquote success. And that's the great thing about success is it's, you define it however. Maybe success for you is maybe you're making 50 grand a year, but you just saved a whole inner city youth program, start a youth inner. That's success to you. Other people's success is I make $10 million a year. I still am not on board with the mid-thigh. But no, but above like the knee for sure.
Yeah, I'm like right here, like, and I enjoy it, and it's crazy because I ordered them thinking they were a little bit longer and they were shorter, and then we squatted. I think we front squatted, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I feel so free.
You gotta show some legs.
Got to, man.
You gotta show off those wheels.
And then when you get the full extension, and then you're like quads, you're like, oh,
look at that sweep.
Come on. I love it.
That's good. We're just talking about short shorts. If you
shorty
just joined
shorts,
us. And how 2010, your boy was rocking the Jordan shorts, like mid shin.
Dude, and that was it. And my wife loves the long shorts for some reason.
Does she? Still?
Yeah, still does. Huh. So anytime, like I've got a pair of, I think I have a pair of Jordan shorts.
I got some Jordan shorts you can borrow.
And literally,
you need to tighten that thing. It happens every week.
Every freaking. It's because I mess with it. So every time I wear them, she goes, yeah.
Long
there
shorts.
you go, long shorts.
That's like, so funny.
What? Women think so different than guys.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I do think like my wife is super attractive when she's wearing like a hoodie. I do think that that's awesome. Like I love her. Like when she's in like a ponytail and a hoodie. But like, I also like when she wears like really tight clothes, like more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just so funny. Like
it's because you're a pig-headed male.
Yeah.
And you're all about
it
looks.
Also might be she doesn't like the short shorts because I have like pink legs because I'm so white. And my wife's type
opaque.
My wife's type is not clear.
She's embarrassed by your legs, your pink legs.
I could see your veins and muscle fibers because your skin is clear.
You have
zero melanin.
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But that's fantastic.
No,
I'm gonna start calling you pink legs.
Hey, you know what Matt Forte's? I think we talked about it on the show. You know what his nickname was for me?
No,
it was Purple.
Purple,
because anytime it was cold in Chicago, I would turn purple.
Oh, the life of a ginger.
Oh, man.
But you're not really, you are, but you're not. Your beard's ginger.
Yeah.
But your hair's not.
Yeah. If you ask Tiffany, he is not. He is not.
You know what's funny? If I grew out, I grew up my beard one time for a bet. And my beard actually, there's some autumn in my beard.
Scottish heritage in you? Irish.
I've got Irish.
So either or, right?
Yeah.
Those Northern Islanders.
Yeah. So my hair's brown, but if my beard gets long enough, there's some autumn in it. For sure.
I don't know if I've ever seen you have any more than like a 5 o'clock shadow.
No, I was bet. I don't remember what year this was. This guy bet me like $300 I wouldn't do it. So I grew it out for like a month, and that was it. That was the most. Because if you notice, well, you maybe don't notice, I got a nice little bald spot in the middle of my mustache. Really? So it's and
is it from a scar or you just
it just doesn't grow. Hair just doesn't grow there. So if I grow a beard, it actually looks like an Amish chin strap because I can't grow a mustache. So it's a terrible looking beard. That's why I never grow it out. So that's kind of when I was a little bit more desperate for money and I was willing to do a little bit more. So yeah, I rocked a disgusting beard for a month. Yeah, which doesn't sound like much to most
I think
people.
we should try it again. I think we should put some money on the table.
It'd have to be a little bit more than $200 this time.
Well, we got Darren. He's rich. So.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, nothing to do with what we're. That kind of feels like early on. If you're new to the podcast, we used to be a lot more jocular, if you will. We've kind of got a lot more serious.
Yeah.
In our older age.
A little more stoic.
Yeah, we used to have debates. In fact, we've got a coworker that for whatever reason he started listening like 2 months ago, but he started with episode 1, which is great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Chris Lowry, thank you, brother.
But he's on episode, well, he won't hear this for another 6 years apparently, at the pace he's listening.
That's a good point.
Because he's still on episode like 18. And we've done, 254? This is 254?
I'll get text at like 11 p.m. sometime, and he'll ask me a question about something that we talked about.
Literally
like
2
in
years ago.
episode 15. And he's like, dude, I literally had to pull over. I was dying. I'm like,
yeah, don't remember that.
oh, dude, do you remember when you said this? It's like, for sure. Yeah. And it's like, and then he'll like, reference stories and like he'll text like Tiffany and I and like say something the episode that she was on, and he's like, "Oh, dude, that's awesome! No way!" And I'm like,
"You don't remember?"
Dude, I can't remember it all.
Well, it's funny because he'll group text me, you, and Darren.
Yeah.
And he's probably done that 15, 16 times.
Yeah. I love
and
it.
the funniest part of it is Darren has not responded to
not
one
a
single
time. You think he remembers? You think if we are like, hold on, let me think back to that conversation. I kind of vaguely remember it. There's no chance Darren remembers it. No chance.
0%. His life it still is, but was absolutely chaotic when we started this thing.
Chaotic, yeah.
All of ours. Think about it. When we started this, it was during the middle of the pandemic. Yeah. The pandemic just went down.
Yeah.
After we released our first episode.
Yeah.
And
we had to try really, really hard to lighten the mood back then.
Yeah. There was a lot of serious going on.
Yeah.
We were upstairs in his upstairs.
You guys want to talk about dying. We want to talk about French fries.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a debate we had early on was.
Oh, yeah.
And we still have. I don't think you've ever forgiven me for that discussion.
No, nor will I ever.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, we power ranked. This was episode like 25, something like that. I don't know what episodes.
It was for sure in the first 25.
We power ranked the top 5 French fry establishments. And I was, let me tell the story, please. What happens generally on these episodes, peel the curtain back, is I'll come up with a topic or something, but I won't fill them in at all on what we're talking about.
It's like when you hear it on the podcast, we're hearing it for the very first time as well.
Fact. So my mentality on this topic was, all right, we're going fast food restaurants. We're going Chick-fil-A, Burger King, McDonald's. Like, these are the top French fry. This is what you think of when you think of French fries. Mr. Bougie over here decides to wrinkle in $60 French fries. Now, of course, they're going to be better than Chick-fil-A French fries. They cost 18 times as much. And I got pretty animated on that episode, and we had a nice little quarrel.
I feel like that quarrel lasted for a couple months
until I actually tried these French fries.
But it wasn't even. But it carried over into other areas. Like we were taking subtle shots at each other.
Started projecting. We started like arguing about things that didn't even need to be argued
just because we were mad about this French fry conversation.
So, but then I tried those French fries. They were everything you said.
And then it was actually, we talked about it with.
So Samir, the episode you just listened to this past Monday.
Yeah.
Tyler and I for Mother's Day took our wives, our kids' mothers, to Nick and Sam's for the Mother's Day brunch.
Yeah.
And again, I know we said it a ton on the episode on Monday, but if you're on the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you have an opportunity anytime to go to Nick and Sam's, but especially on whenever they're having one of these brunches,
dude, you've
got to go.
It's insane.
It was unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, any food you could think of was laid out there. And not only any food, but the best of any food was laid out there in buffet style. You go get as much as you want. And we're talking high-end steakhouse. This isn't like, no disrespect. This isn't like China buffet. Like this is legit.
I mean, they had like
hours
stone crab and shrimp.
It was awesome.
Like fresh salmon, and they had a fresh sushi bar, and then a breakfast bar, and then a meat carving station, and a taco station, and a smoothie bar, and a juice bar. I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah.
Absolutely nuts.
It was
and
awesome.
it was hard because when we're listening to this now, I am now done with 75 hard, but at the time
You were during it.
and it was hard.
And I witnessed you stayed true.
It was hard.
You didn't
I just had a
didn't
lot of
give up.
that New York strip. It was a lot of that. But I'm weak when it comes to breakfast food. Like I love breakfast food. So they had like these like banana waffles and banana French toast and like all these desserts, and it's like that's my weakness, and that was hard. And
Dude, the waffles were basically sugar cone. Like it almost disintegrated and melted in your, like, you hear that phrase?
Yeah.
Melted in your mouth. It almost literally disintegrated as you were chewing, because I think it was 100% sugar. I don't think there was any other ingredients, but it was phenomenal. So when you're done with 75 hour, you don't have to go back. But anyway, yeah.
Point is,
shout out to Samir.
Yeah,
Nick and
Samir,
Sam's.
thank you so much, man. That
awesome.
was it. Made our wives. It made our wives' day. It really was awesome, and they felt really special, and our kids, like we went to Disney earlier this year, and like all they talked about was this Chef Mickey deal. Like it's like a buffet style. Well, it was Disney, so they were still in the middle of COVID there. So like it wasn't buffet. They just bring it to you, and like, look, I'm just gonna be honest.
It was overrated. I went to the Mickey Chef thing 2 years ago. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, everybody talks about this is the best, and I mean, I wouldn't say it was Golden Corral, but it was like, it was pretty close. It was pretty close. I've had better meals at Golden Corral.
But think about from a 5-year-old's perspective.
They thought it was
Mickey,
the coolest thing. Mickey's there, and they came out and took pictures 17 feet away, and like.
Yeah, that's right. I went before COVID.
Yeah.
I went in 2019.
So it was cool. They
So
come
it was
up
normal.
and interact.
Yeah, you hug in, you're doing the whole thing.
Nah, we didn't. And so we asked them, and unfortunately, my 5-year-old twin still thought Chef Mickey was pretty cool, but the older two were like, no, this food is crazy. Like, this is so good. Like, you're telling me I could go make whatever ice cream I want, and then I could make whatever smoothie I want. I can do this. And it was just, anyway. So
well, it reminds me when I was 12 and up to that, and you've seen pictures of me.
Yeah.
My go-to was this Chinese buffet called Harvest Moon in Abilene. And I think back now, I'm like, I put that into my body.
I'm going to be honest with you. I was a big Chinese buffet guy, too.
Huge.
Big.
You telling me I can have unlimited Chinese food?
Dude. Because that is one of my,
that
I
was
don't
my
have
Disney
it nearly
World.
enough. Like that, it's one of my favorite types of food.
That was my Disney World at 12. Anyway, I don't know how we ended up here, but happy Mother's Day. Hopefully you all had a great Mother's Day this past Sunday. We definitely did at Nick and Sam's. But back to we were actually going down a path that's relevant. Speaking of episodes and, things we've talked about in the past. So this episode today is number 255.
Dang.
Can you believe that?
Dang.
We started this thing April 2020.
I think it was
Pandemic.
March. Are you sure it wasn't March?
Well, the first episode released in mid-April. Or mid-March. Mid-March, you're right.
Mid-March,
Mid-March.
Yeah.
I think we technically
'Cause we had
recorded our
like
first episode.
4 or 5 episodes that we recorded at the Star.
Yeah. But
Before
we didn't
the
release
pandemic
until,
went.
we didn't release till mid-March.
You're right, yep.
Of 2020. Then the world went crazy, and it's been crazy ever since. But this is episode 255. And actually a coworker of ours, well, before I get into that, we've had 104 guests on our podcast in those 255 episodes. And just like we talked about yesterday, until you see something on paper, kind of punches you in the face. Yeah. So I actually wrote down some of the biggest names that we've had the privilege of speaking with. It's kind of a long list, so bear with me.
It's kind of a humble brag, but bear with us.
Here we go. Yeah, so if you're new to us and you missed earlier, these are all names we've had. These are all people we've had. So go back and listen. Like our friend Chris Lowry. Shout out to Chris Lowry, who won't listen to this for another 2 years. Cody Bellinger. Rich Froning. Matt Frazier. Tia Claire Toomey. Matt Forte. Troy Aikman. Nick Bear. Michael Irvin. Dr. Lane Norton. The Sleep Doctor Michael Bruce. Ryan Mickler. Andy Stumpf. Andy Frisella. Sal Frisella. The Iron Cowboy James Lawrence. Tana Amin. Her husband Dr. Daniel Amin. Matt Best. Teddy Bruschi. Ryan Moran. Nir Ayal. Chris Herron. Drew Robinson. JP Donnell. Jake Schick. Sean Cannell. Billie Jean is marketing. Carlos Reyes. Josh Landon. Michael Easter. Ethan Cross. Dan Churchill. Sorry, I need a break. Tara Lee Cobble, Charlie Price, Donnie Vincent, Lecrae, Dr. Andy Galpin, Aaron Watson, Justin Forsett, Gary V, arguably the biggest name in social media, Gary V, knees over toes guy Ben Patrick, who's becoming the biggest name in social media, Jordan Burroughs, Brian Matza, Joey Molinaro, Spencer Lee, Billy Corbin, I'm almost done, Max Tuning, Jeremy Andrus, Bobby Witt Jr., the Phenom,
Yep.
Shelly Ibach, Sean Rogers, Jim DeChico, Akash Singh, Stephen Borelli, Nate Awad, and Brandon Marshall. Those are just some of the names.
Some.
That's not even everybody. But just think about that killer lineup of elite performers in their industry.
Elite performers with amazing journeys,
With
too.
amazing stories.
I mean, unbelievable stories. And, yeah, we could spend all day just talking about those.
Right.
But it's insane to think the conversations that we've had, the discussions, the debates, it's wild, dude.
And that's what I was reflecting on was where else can you get those type of people all in one resource other than this podcast? Now, that's obviously a tooting our own horn and a plug for us, obviously. But think about that. You have some of the greatest minds in their industry all on one podcast, which is our podcast. Now, again, there's great podcasts everywhere.
Yeah.
But you have all of these people, all of their life experience, all of their perspective, all in one resource, which is this podcast.
Wow.
And so as I was thinking about it, and the reason this came up, other than just wanting to brag about ourselves, is a coworker of ours asked me the other day, and I get questions, I'm sure you do too, hey, who's your favorite guest?
Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite story? But he asked me a question I hadn't been asked before, and it made me start to reflect and think, okay. The question was, what's the one thing, the one lesson you've taken away since y'all started this podcast? And I thought, that's a good question. And then my next thought was, I can't boil it down to just one thing. And so what I did was I went and I sat down and I said, okay, what are some of the thoughts I had before starting this podcast? And what are the perspectives that I've gained since we started this? Because, again, I just railed off 50 people right there. We've basically gotten a PhD the last 2 years in human performance and development.
Yeah.
We've had some, like I said, some of the most wildly successful people. However you deem success, these people are successful in their field. And we've had the opportunity to peel back the onion and figure out how they got there. And so we've basically gotten a PhD the last 2 years. And that's what I wanted to talk about. So I know you have a list in your head. I actually wrote down a list of ideas I had before starting this podcast. So I'll just go through them real quick. Maybe say a couple years.
Yep.
We'll go back and forth on elaborating. But ideas I had before. Number one, and these aren't necessarily in any order, but just what I wrote. And this isn't all extensive list either.
Yeah.
This is just something, a couple things that I jotted down.
Yeah, and I think just if you are starting a podcast, just started, been doing it, or thinking about starting one, just listen, because I think it's important, because everybody has these, preconceived ideas of what running a podcast is going to be.
Well, and let me caveat. I didn't explain that very well. This isn't podcast specific. This is more just about life.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
and I understand that. We're not telling you how to start a podcast, like what I thought a podcast was going to be and what this is, but like also just listen. Like listen if you're looking at perspective on, okay, hey, like if I'm going to be what the expectations and what reality was.
Yeah. So number one, again, no specific order necessarily, but actually, I say that this one probably was my biggest preconceived notion. Successful people have a secret formula and or an unattainable talent. That's just what I assumed about success, was they've got something I don't. They've got a talent that I don't have. They've got a formula that they're keeping secret from the rest of us. They've just got something that the rest of us don't. That's what I used to think. Number two, successful people have everything figured out and planned out. Again, I thought success equaled you have this roadmap, you know exactly where you're going, everything's laid out, it's going to go perfectly, here we go. That's what I assumed about success. Number three, selfishness is always a bad thing. Now, selfishness can be a bad thing, and that's what I used to think was selfishness, no matter what shape, way, or form, selfishness is bad. You don't want to be selfish, ever. That's just kind of a preconceived notion that I had. Number 4, once I reach a certain level of income, job status, or a quote-unquote place in life, I'll be happy and I'll be satisfied. And then number 5, the 5th thing I wrote down is success is this quote-unquote far-off, distant pipe dream. Mm-hmm. Like it's this thing that's out there that's kind of vague. I know what it is, but I don't. But it's out there.
Yeah.
It's not attainable for me. Mm-hmm. Those are just some of the thoughts that I had going into this podcast.
Yeah.
What about you? What are some thoughts?
I would agree with a lot of those. I mean, I would agree with all of them for sure, but the idea of successful people are just innately, they're destined to be successful. That's a big one for me. And it's funny because even playing, when I was growing up watching guys in the NFL, I'm like, oh, they're just born great, you know, or they have this work ethic that like just is unrealistic for normal people. And then I got into the locker room and I'm like, these are just regular dudes that like really struggle too. Mm-hmm. And so I knew it, but then I went into a different sector and I forgot it. And so I'm looking at CEOs or I'm looking at really successful people within whatever industry that they're in. And I'm like, they just have it. Like they really have it. And talking with people and having conversations and hearing the struggles and even on podcasts, like I've gone on other podcasts and, you know, you leave and the host of that podcast is like, dude, that's amazing, man. Like so you've got it. You figured it out. You got this. And I'm thinking like, dude, we all fake it really good. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just sharing things that I've learned. And I even share like transparently things that I struggle with. And we just, when we hear people in the media, when we hear people on social media, when we hear people on, you know, movies, or when we read an article or we hear them on a podcast, we're like, they've got it figured out because they say it how I'm thinking it. And it's like, I finish this podcast and then I get in a fight with my wife, like literally right after, you know what I mean? It's like, We don't have it figured out. So having these conversations, but I think partly between you, me, and Darren, like asking questions that force guests to also be very real too, because we try to create a safe scenario or safe conversation that it's like, okay, you feel comfortable saying the things that you struggle with, things that suck, things that you had to overcome, things that you're struggling with still now. And it's like these highly successful people don't consider themselves successful either. Mm. So it's all a matter of perspective and where you're at. And I think perspective for me has just changed. Yeah. And the people that I really truly now look to are the people that can enjoy the place that they're at right in that moment. Mm-hmm. And then, but recognize, hey, there's still more growth, but I've still come a long way.
Right.
I don't have it figured out. I still mess up all the time. I still struggle, but also like I'm not going to ignore the victories that I've had along the way too. And that's cause for celebration. So perspective has totally changed. And then also too, I think the selfishness thing, right? I was always on the other side. Like I think it's better to be selfless. But I think that's a fallacy. That you always have to give. Because if you're pouring out your cup constantly and you're never ever filling it back up, how can you fill somebody else's cup? Mm-hmm. You can't fill somebody else's cup with an empty cup.
Right.
So I've learned now it's just different, because when I think selfish, right, I think like, oh yeah, me and the boys, we're gonna go to Vegas, or, you know, I'm not gonna do anything for anybody else. I'm just keeping everything. That's like the idea. But selfish can also be like, hey, I need a day just to rest. I need to go just focus on me. I need to meditate. I need to pray. I need to do this. I need to focus on building myself back up so that I can do those things. My idea of selfishness has changed because Darren's always like,
Darren harps on this all the time. You have to be selfish. Well, but then I think about the lineup that Matt Frazier talked about it, how selfish he was during his career and how to attain the goals that he had to be the best in the world. He had to be selfish. Rich Froning said the same thing.
Yeah.
Tia Claire Toomey said the same thing. I just picked the CrossFit world, but those are three that come to mind of that's exactly what they thought was to be the best in the world. This has to consume.
Everything has to come. My best friend's wedding has to come second. Right. I can't go and I can't drink because I will not sacrifice my training. I get it. Totally get it. And I mean, that's one thing that Andy Frisella's program has taught me is it's like, sorry, like I've got these goals. Like 75 hard is a selfish, absolutely selfish challenge that you're going through. And my wife, she talks about, she goes, I can't wait for this thing to be over because my laundry is going to be cut in half because Tyler goes through 4 outfits a day, workout outfits a day.
Right.
And it's like, so there's a ton of selfish aspects and it's like, all right, hey, babe, once we put the kids down, I got to either get my second workout in. So, I'll see you at 9:00.
Right.
So there's selfish components to it, but I think as a dad and as a husband, I am a much better man because I've gone through this. Yeah. I've gone through the challenges and disciplines that are required for me just to be a better man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a lot more next week. We're going to review your experience with 75 hard. I did earlier this year, and my experience, and that's definitely an element we're going to touch on is what we've learned from that particular experience.
Yeah.
But okay, so those are some ideas we had coming into this 2 years ago.
Thought that's what it was.
Over the 2 years, what have we since learned? And so a couple of things I wrote down. I think, and this is how I answered, the guy that asked me what's the one. So if I had to pick one thing, this is probably the one thing. 1 and 2 really, but this one maybe more so than 2. It's like 1A, 1B for me. The number one thing I've probably learned more than anything else is no one has this thing figured out. There's not a single best way. We're all just doing this the best that we can.
Yep.
Whether you're Rich Froning, you're Ben Gibbs, you're David McKenzie, whoever you are, you're going about this life the way that you see fit as the best way. Just because Rich Froning's made millions of dollars in CrossFit doesn't mean he had some laid out plan and knew every single step before he got there. He just started working one day and didn't stop for 10 years. And that's how he ended up where he is. And that's the theme that we hear over and over is there's so many different paths, so many different ways to get to quote unquote success.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about success is you define it however. Maybe success for you is maybe you're making $50,000 a year, but you just saved a whole inner city youth program, started a youth inner. That's success to you. Other people's success is I make $10 million a year. Now, I would argue one's probably a little bit more hollow than the other from my perspective.
Yeah.
But to that person, success to them, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so there's really no one way to get there. That's what I've learned. And then 1B for me is, and this is huge for me, is just get started.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out as you go. I used to think, I had to have everything laid out. I had to have it all planned. That's just me by nature. I like to plan. I like to make sure things are in place. But what I've learned, and this is more podcast specific probably, but what I've learned from our guests as well is just get going.
Yep.
They say the best time to plant a tree was yesterday.
Yeah.
The second best time, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah.
Just get going.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest lessons. Another thing I've learned is people who you put on you talked about this a second ago. People who we put on a pedestal, they're normal people.
Yeah.
They got problems. They've got struggles. They do just this. They live their life the same exact way that we. And honestly, meeting Darren opened this up for me 5 years ago. Getting to know Darren, his flaws, his good things. One of the best men I know, but he's not. He had a great talent for playing football.
Yep.
That's it. But everything else, he's just a normal person. That's another thing. Number 4, as great as money is, it doesn't do what you think it does. No matter how much you require, you're always going to strive for more. And again, I want to be sensitive with this comment. Usually there's some aspects where like, screw you if you don't take it this way. But in this, specifically with the climate we're in right now, money being such an issue, I understand that money is a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
My point is, even when you make it, it's not fulfilling that hole that you think it's going to fulfill. It's great.
Yeah.
I love that I don't necessarily have to worry about money at this point in my life. I mean, I do, but I don't.
Yeah.
I've gotten to a place where it's not as big of a struggle or big of a worry.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like I thought it was going to feel 3 years ago when I was striving for it.
Yep.
And talking to 100+ guests, same thing. You talk to multimillionaires, they still think about like they're still striving.
But their striving is not associated with money.
Right.
Like you get to a point and chasing money is not a sustainable motivator.
Right.
It's when they're doing something special, it's when they're pursuing something else,
right.
Something bigger,
a bigger purpose,
something more lasting,
right.
Something more sustainable, like, creating a great, whether it's a product, creating a team and mentoring people, creating a curriculum, helping, whatever it is, it's not money.
Right. Yeah. 3 more here. Nuance is a conversational / intellectual superpower. Black and white statements are lazy. Big issues require deep thought and deep solutions.
That's good.
So this is one of the biggest things is it's so, and actually I want to do an episode on this probably next week about the importance of nuance.
Yeah.
And how we're losing that ability and why we're losing that ability and why it's much easier to make a black and white statement as opposed to having some dimensions to your thought process.
Yep.
But to me, I'll leave it there at that, is how important nuance is, whether it's racism, whether it's poverty, whether it's government, overreach, whether it's COVID, whatever it requires an in-depth discussion with nuance. You can't just make one statement about it and that covers everything.
Yeah.
There's going to be layers to it.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that more next week. Number 6, make the best of wherever you find yourself. Hate your job, make the best of it. That's just the example I thought of. That's been a big lesson for me is stop being so future thinking. So I hate this situation I'm in. And again, I'm telling myself this. Make the best of that situation. There's good things. There's great aspects of wherever you find yourself. There's good things about that situation.
Yeah.
You just have to find it.
Yeah.
Your mind tells you to be negative. This sucks. This is horrible. But I promise you, if you take a second, you can find great things out of that situation.
Yes, that's good.
And then the last thing that I wrote down, and I say this, I've said it 100 times at this point, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's that important. Ultimately, and you said it a second ago, what it comes down to is serving other people.
Yeah.
No matter how much money you make, no matter what level you reach at your job, all 100+ people we've talked to, their story, whether they realized it or not, they would always make the comment about, I changed focus from me to others. That's probably, again, one of the biggest lessons I've taken is ultimately, that's the ultimate joy.
Yep.
Is service of others.
Yeah.
So those are my things that I've learned. What about you? What would you say?
I think first, and I think I'm going to, there's a handful of things that you said that I'm going to put my own perspective on, is I think comparison is the biggest, obstacle to success. If you're going to compare yourself to someone else, you're destined to fail because you're trying to follow someone else's journey or do what somebody else did. Now, can you learn from other people? Yes. But here's the problem is that everybody's success story and journey is unique. Every single one of them. No one can do the same thing and see the same results. I mean, please send me something that you did exactly. I mean, like these real estate coaches make a killing on, hey, follow steps A, B, C, and D. Here's the deal is, yes, you can learn from some of those things, but you're not going to do exactly what somebody else did. So comparing yourself to somebody else is going to be one, the thing that's going to stop you from starting, because I can't do that. Oh, he did it. I can't do it. So do not compare yourself to somebody else, because that is going to be the biggest inhibitor of you actually achieving what you think that you want. I think the next is every single guest that we've had has specialized in something. You think about it, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's supplements, whether it's a certain form of medicine, whether it's certain form of business. Now you can have different areas that you understand and know well, but what I struggle with is I want to do this. I get distracted. Like there's a level of focus that people that have achieved or achieved a large amount of growth is there's a discipline of focus. And I think that that's really important. There's a book called Essentialism, and essentially there's an
Essentially
image.
an essentialism.
Essentially in essentialism, they say. But they say, okay, hey, picture a sun, like as you draw it as like a little kid, right? You got a circle, and then you've got those rays that come out, like a child's drawing of a sun, right? The heat coming out. So what that does is when you're, okay, I'm trying to make this person happy, I'm trying to do that, or I'm trying to be this, or I'm trying to act like somebody else, or I'm trying to do this, or, oh, hey, I got this opportunity over here. What happens is that light, right, which is a form of energy, that energy is dispersed in every which direction. And it may warm the room, and it may do something like that, but imagine all of that energy focused into a laser, right? The ground that is going to gain, if it's focused in one direction. I think it's really important to note that, hey, listen, if I'm going to do something, I've got to be focused on it. And then also too is I've just got to pour into that, and I've got to be consistent. The idea of the person that's walking to achieve fitness results or a physical change to their body is not ever going to be as successful as a person that enjoys walking, right? Because they're going to be able to maintain, they're going to be able to sustain. When you're focused on something and you want to become the best at it, that is when you gain the most ground and you see the most growth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of our guests that we've brought on that are considered experts or high level or successful or whatever term you want to put to it have realized, all right, listen, there's other people that do some of these other things that maybe I could do. They do them better. I'm going to let them do that. I'm going to be the best at this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that it makes me think of the book, and we actually have it sitting on our table here, the book Outliers. And combining your first two right there, comparisonitis and having focus. It's easy, and that's another thing this podcast has taught me. It's easy to compare myself to somebody and say, oh, they had it over. Look at that. They did it so quickly.
Yeah.
They became a success overnight. And what that book talks about and what you're talking about and what this podcast has taught me, it may look like an overnight success, but you didn't see the 10 years, 12 years, 15 years of work put in. Think about any successful person you know. There is a story of years of work that went into that success. Anybody, even a child prodigy, even a 13-year-old piano phenom, guess what? They've been playing since they were 3.
Yeah.
10 years of work.
Yeah.
Andy Frisella talks about the first 10 years of his life or his business life, made $65,000 the whole time.
Yeah.
Now he's got more money than he knows what to do with.
Yeah.
Rich Froning, years. Yeah, he was successful his first year in CrossFit, successful in the sport of CrossFit his first year.
But it was
he was an athlete from the age of 12.
Yeah.
And was loved fitness at the age of 13.
Yeah. Matt Frazier came on the scene.
Matt Frazier
won his first CrossFit competition that he went to. Yeah, but that's after an Olympic lifter.
Right. So literally anybody you want to throw out there, any example you want to throw out there. I do this sometimes with other podcasts. I think, man, they just started their podcast and look at this. They've got this many listeners now. Well, guess what? They've been doing other things for 10 years.
Building their brand
before this.
Yeah.
So literally anybody you can, now I'm sure you can think of, if you sat down and really thought about it, you could probably think of a true overnight success. Yeah. But the point is.
Island Boys.
The Island Boys, yeah. But what were they doing at age
I wouldn't consider that
3 or 4? Their personality that turned, I'm telling you, I think I could debunk.
Don't justify it.
I think I could debunk
Let me finish my list.
My point is,
it
always takes more time than we think it will.
Yeah.
More work than we think it will. And it doesn't happen as quickly as we think it will. And that's okay.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree.
Because again, it's not a destination. You're not getting to a point and then you're done. This is your life.
Yes.
Getting there is your life. That is the journey. That is what you're trying to appreciate.
Yeah.
It's not once you get there, you'll be joyful and happy. It's be joyful now while you're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that, and this is something too that in my football story about identity and all that I've learned, but has been reinforced with this podcast is your value is not in what you do. And I think we've had guests that believe that their value is in their professional success. But anybody that's had professional success and they really truly find their identity and value in what they do, having had these interviews, I can tell the difference between the two, and you can see that. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Is I think you have a much higher probability of success when you recognize that I don't have the pressure of if I don't do this, then I'm an absolute failure and I'm not worthy of, this is drastic. I'm not worthy of being on this planet because that's the value I bring. If I don't do this, then I'm not worth anything. I'm not a husband because and I think, in my opinion, and this is something I've tried to implement the last year, is that it's like my value is not in the income that I bring. The value is not in the physical shape that I'm in. The value that I bring, the value I bring is how, like you said, how I serve other people, how I show up to do the work that I'm asked for, how reliable I am. Again, obviously I go to the faith side of it. Like that is the ultimate, right? Like, the value that I am in my soul, right, is tied up in something much bigger than myself. So I see a freedom with people that can distinguish what they do and who they are. Mm-hmm. And that is really important. It's something, may not be something that we've talked about a ton or we've addressed with guests, but just talking with people, the ones that I think are reaching even a higher level, that next level, are the ones that are able to distinguish between the two. Mm-hmm. Because what it does is it allows you to not have to make that one sale or push that one product or close that one deal or win that one competition. It's about, okay, long game here.
Right.
Like I'm going to do this because I'm enjoying the journey because I know that that's not who I am. It's something that I do. And I'm not looking at just slinging a product or closing a deal and pressuring that. Like I was talking to my brother-in-law yesterday about this. And talking about like a car salesman. Car sale, it's sell. Don't let them leave the lot until you sell them a car. You know what the best, most successful ones are the ones that are like, hey, you know what? You probably don't need to buy the King Ranch. Honestly, the XLT, we can add this and this, and I can save you $25,000. Or you know what? Guess what? The Chevys down the street, that actually may be a better car. There's a trust that you build in that when you're not focused on immediate results and you're looking at long-term, because your identity is not in your performance that day or that month or that year.
Yeah, it's it sounds a little bit like a contradiction because we just got done saying Matt Frazier's focus, we'll use Matt as an example.
Yeah.
Focus solely on being the best CrossFitter in the world.
And like I said,
But
not all of them feel that way. And I'm not saying Matt's one way or the other.
well, but let me continue with that example. So Matt would say that he had to be selfish, he had to focus, but that doesn't mean that he found his true identity in being a CrossFitter. Because the reason you know he didn't is because how he's killing it now.
Yeah.
And he was able to walk away.
Yeah.
If it was his true identity, that's all he ever thought of, and that's all his life goal was, he wouldn't have walked away on top.
Yep.
He walked away because he knew he could take those same skills that made him the best CrossFitter ever. He can now apply those same skills
Yeah.
into his next career. It's like the book Atomic Habits, which again sits on our table here. That he explained identity the best I've ever heard it explained. And it's so obvious now that he says it, but it's
For sure.
finding those attributes that make you who you are, that can translate to whatever you do.
And you and I talked about this. Your identity are traits that you have created and that you were born with and that you've been given that someone can't take away from you.
Right.
If it's a job, it can be taken away. If it's money, it can be taken away. If it's material things, it can be taken away. I mean, there's story after story after story after story of billionaires and millionaires that have lost all of their assets because their identity was in that, and they did things to feed an empty identity that cost them their identity.
Yeah, think about, again, back to Matt Frazier, is part of his identity was an organized person that thinks analytically.
Yeah.
That serves him well in CrossFit. Guess what? That now serves him well in his
Business.
hard work pays off training app, his supplement company. So just because his title changed, he didn't lose his identity. He's still able to continue with his identity because he knew who he was internally. He knows what makes him elite and special and makes him Matt Frazier.
That's right.
And so now you take CrossFit away from me, or I'll take it away from myself, I'm still just as fulfilled and happy as ever because I've chosen to focus on the skills that I have that make me who I am, not the skill of being a CrossFitter.
That's right.
You talked about it this yesterday. I struggled the same way. I found my identity in football.
Yep.
I didn't find my identity in, I like to be a team player.
Yeah.
I like tasks and accomplishing tasks. I like to work really hard. I didn't focus on those aspects. I focused on, no, I have to put a helmet and shoulder pads on to have any value.
I have to have my name called. And I have to have people come up to me after the game and congratulate me for how well I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Had I focused, and that's what I've learned these past 2 years, had I focused on those other aspects. Now, again, thankfully, I've found that in other ways, but it took me way longer than it should have.
Yeah.
Had I been focusing on those before. And had I had this podcast in 2011, I probably wouldn't have struggled with the transition as bad, if we're being honest, because I would have. Now, it still would have been hard. It doesn't mean you're just going to be apathetic and like, screw football. Like, I don't care about it. It doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
But it just means that the transition is going to be a little bit. And whatever you're.
Yeah. But if your identity's in those things, it only betters your actual performance in whatever that field is.
Right. But again, if I can get excited that I love to work hard.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter what I'm doing to work hard for.
Yeah.
Because I can be excited about working hard.
That's right.
And then the other lesson I talked about, no matter where I'm at, now I can be happy about it because I'm working hard where I am.
That's right.
Even if the actual physical job sucks, I don't like it, hey, guess what? I like to work hard.
Yeah.
And I can still lean on that.
That's right. And it mitigates the peaks and valleys, right? It takes the big ups and downs, and as opposed to like mountains and valleys, it turns into rolling waves. Because again, yes, you're going to have bad days. I mean, to say that you're not is naive. And you are going to have mountaintop experiences. To say that you're not is naive. But what it does is it mitigates that distance between the two, because I'm not a failure if I didn't close that deal, or I'm not a failure if I didn't win that track meet, or I'm not a failure. It's like, okay, I didn't do as well as I wanted to, but guess what? I'm going to get up, I'm going to work hard, or hey, I'm going to encourage somebody else. They did great.
Yeah.
Because it's important to me to pour into other people, and they saw success. So you know what? My loss, my L, isn't as bad as it would be.
Yeah, to me, that's that big component and aspect of true freedom. Mental freedom is when the losses don't sting as bad, the wins don't get you off your game as much, when you can have a little bit more of an even approach. To me, that's mental freedom.
That's right.
Now you're not hanging in the balance of everything that happens to you.
Yes.
You're good to go no matter what.
Yeah.
And no matter where you find yourself.
You control your environment. Your environment doesn't control you.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. What else? What else you got?
Now, I don't know, man. I just learned a lot this year and last year. I mean, I think early on it was like drinking out of a fire hose, to be honest with you, because there was so much information and there were so many cool guests and there was so much. I think in the last year, though, I've been able to, and I think we all have been able to listen a little bit between the lines too, and soak up some of the knowledge with things that they didn't even say. And man, it's been so fun. We've had such great guests. We've had such good conversations here with just us. I'm excited for the next few years, man, and beyond, because I just, man, there's as much as I really hope that people get stuff out of this. Sorry, y'all, I'm not here for you. Like our success is not tied up in how good we are and how many followers we have, because of being a part of these conversations and learning these things. I mean, man, it's poured into me, which is poured into my wife, which is poured into my kids, which is poured into my coworkers and my friends. So there's so much knowledge that I've gained just by being around some of these people, you included, which is I never thought I'd say.
Yeah, selfishly speaking, I mean, and I'd actually be curious if anybody's been listening to this since the beginning and you've stuck with us all 255 episodes. Number one, I'd be curious what your feedback is. What have you learned?
Yeah.
So DM us on the at one.shot.pod Instagram page. DM us. Tell us what because we've had these thoughts and takeaways, maybe you've had something different. Would love to hear those. But beyond all that, selfishly, even if, if nothing else, this podcast has given me better perspective.
Yeah.
It's made me work harder. It's made me a better husband. It's made me a better father. It's made me think more critically. It's made me reflect on myself better and more intensely. It's given me new perspectives because we've talked to people who grew up completely different than I did. So selfishly, as you said, if nothing else, this has made me a way better human being than I ever thought it could have. Because again, I came in this a little naive. I didn't know what it was going to turn. Again, I thought it was more about the people listening, and it is. That's why we do it. But at the same time, it's about the transformation of ourselves.
That's right.
And I think it's, like I said, it's been a 2-year free, well, not free, it hasn't been free, but somewhat free education in life. Yeah. And that's what's been the best thing for me.
That's right.
So hopefully you guys feel the same way. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please text it to a friend, a group of friends, post it on your Instagram, your TikTok, your Twitter, which now is, I guess, going some changes with the whole, what's the name? I don't live on Twitter. I think it's the devil, but if you do, post it on there. But yeah, man, thank you for joining us these last 2 years. I know we don't do this a lot. We don't reflect very often, but thinking about how crazy that is, 250, that's now not every episode's an hour, but that's 250 plus hours, 300 hours, we'll call it. Yeah. Of speaking into this microphone. That is a long time. That is a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours. So I apologize.
So bless you if you have listened since the beginning.
Golly.
No, but it's been fun, man. And like you said, we're maybe bad news to our haters out there, but we do plan on doing this for years and years to come. Because again, it is about you, but at the same time, we just know how much it's benefiting us personally. Yeah, that's why we're going to continue.
I hope it comes through that like we enjoy this.
Yes.
I really do.
I really do get excited. Like Monday mornings when I wake up, I literally get excited that we're going to come in here and do this podcast. When we have an interview scheduled, I really do. Yeah. Still 2 years in. And that's how I know I'm onto something. Me personally, just speaking for myself, that's how I know I'm onto something that's truly worth pursuing, is that I still get just as excited for episode 255 as I did for episode 1. Yeah. And if you can find something like that, whatever it is for you, to me, that's the golden ticket. You found it.
Yep.
Whatever it is, whatever you define it to be, if you still get excited day 250 or episode 255 as you did episode 1, you're on to something.
Love it.
Love it. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. You guys have a great rest of the week, great weekend, and we will catch you on Monday.